Hoi almal, dis juffrou Nagel en vandag doen ons Die Nuwe Kind deur Pieter Strauss. So Die Nuwe Kind is the new child. So dis 'n lidwoord. So in Afrikaans we have two lidwoorde. It is and die. And could mean like anything or anyone, but die is quite specific. So die maak dit iemand spesifiek gaan oor 'n nuwe leerder by die skool. So the die is making it about someone specific and specifically about a new child at the school. And this is just sort of to give context about when this is taking place or when the poem was maybe like, well, not necessarily when the poem was written, but like the time the poem was based on. So na 1994, na apartheid, so it's after apartheid. Skole het geïntegreer en leerders het geleidelik gewoond daaraan geraak dat wit, swart, bruin saam skool gaan. So it just says like schools integrated after apartheid, and as time went on, kids got used to being quite a few different races within one school. Aan die begin was dit moeilik om aan te pas en in die gedig het ons 'n swart seun wat na 'n oorwegende blanke skool gaan, die eerste swart kind in die skool. So it just says, in the beginning it was quite difficult to sort of adapt because of the division that was sort of like sowed before, sowed a word, I don't know, you understand what I'm saying. And then in this poem specifically, we have a black boy who is going to a predominantly white school. And in this poem, we can also assume that he's the first black child in this predominantly white school. Okay, so now we'll just look at the whole poem. So obviously some things are highlighted as I'm reading it. Maybe see if you can realize why it is highlighted. So, Die Nuwe Kind. Ons oop en jou in jou spore vas. Die nuwe kind hier in ons klas. In ons skooldrag langs ons meneer. Jou hare volgens die skoolreëls geskeer. Hector se boekwee, hoor ons jou naam, 'n koningskind, al is jy skaam. Bedees klink jy, asof jy ons bedank, en gaan sit dan stil in jou bank. Uit 'n Tupperware bakkie, soos dit hoort, eet jy pauses jou snytjies brood, maar eenkant, alleen, onder 'n boom, gaan staan jy dan en droom. In die kunstklas word jou pen 'n mas, hys jy prentjieseile uit jou ribbekas. Vaar jy weg oor wit papier, die toekoms in, nog ver van hier. So the purple things that are highlighted are all pronouns, okay, and they're quite personal pronouns, which just indicates that it's an akspreker, although it's sort of like talking collectively from a group by saying ons, the speaker is still essentially included in that group, and yeah, so, alhoewel dit in die meervoudsvorm gebruik word, ons, maak dit die gedig meer persoonlik. In die gedig praat die ekspreker van ons en jou, wat beklemtoon dat die nuwe leerder nie deel van die ons is nie. So the reason the pronouns are also really important in here is because of the sort of like the words people would use when they spoke during the apartheid years, and that whole division between like them and us. Yeah, basically, so that's what's happening here. It's basically saying that like the speaker, it's ekspreker, they're talking from like their perspective, it's always been included in this group, and then this new learner who's not part of this group anymore is seen as the yo. Okay, and the reason this learner is not part of this group yet is because he is black. There's no other reason. It's because he's black. And that's why I think it's quite effective to use the ons and yo, because if anyone has gone to the Apartheid Museum, you would know like the sort of like language that our effort would use was the like them and us. So uiterlike typografie, so what the poem looks like. 4 quatraine, so there are 4 stanzas of 4 lines each. Alliterasie en assonansie bind die gedig tot 'n eenheid. There's quite a few alliteration assonancy that like binds the poem as a whole. There might be other ones that I definitely missed. I think when we went through class, we saw a few of them. I just highlighted some of them. And then in the first 3 stanzas, okay, na elke tweede versiel is daar 'n punt wat op die idee dui. After the first, like in the first 3 stanzas, after every second line, there's a full stop that indicates an idea. And die rhyme schema is paar-rhyme. The rhyme scheme is paar-rhyme because it's AABB, and a paar is a couple, so it's AABB. Innerlike typografie, so is there progression inside the poem. Daar is progressie in die gedig, begin by die aankoms van die nuwe kind in die skool, en daar word die verloop van sy dae en aanpassing by die skool beskryf. So there is progression in this poem because we start the poem with the new child in the school, and sort of like how life goes in the school. We see that how his days pass, how he adjusts to the new school, and it actually is discussed or described within this poem. So there is progression. Because this is stanza 1, so we start with ons oë pen jou en jou spore vas. So basically just our eyes sort of like makes you stop just where you are, like you can't move any forward. Spore is like steps, so we make you, like our stays make you stop. So this goes to the ons en jou, contrast, jou, buitestander versus ons. So it's the contrast of the pronouns. And remember, as we said in the previous slide, it is quite important because that was the sort of language that was used during apartheid, and unfortunately language that is still sometimes used today. It's just jou, buitestander. So jou is the person on the outside versus the ons, the people who are already part of the group. So spore vas. Staan net daar en kan nie vorentoe beweeg as gevolg van die leerders se starende blikke nie. Hulle is nie vriendelik teenoor die nuwe kind nie. So the reason this boy can't really move forward or feels like he doesn't want to move forward is because the way these kids are staring at him is not very friendly. They're not very friendly towards like this new child in their class or in their school. So dubbelpunt, the colon, beklemtoon versdeel 2, it's emphasizing line 2. It's actually giving us a reason why they're sort of staring at this child for now, saying die nuwe kind hier ons klas, the new child here in our like class. In ons skooldrag langs ons meneer, so in our school uniform next to our teacher. So niemand staan uit nie. This goes to school uniform. Almal dra dieselfde klere and everyone's wearing the same. This can also be a very loose play on the Transvaal Union. They're saying was eendrag maak mag, which means like in unity there's power. And yeah, like I feel like it might be a very loose play on that, something that was used like back in the day, a very long time ago. That was a saying. It was adapted from like Dutch as far as I know, and then it was used by the Transvaal Union. So this goes to the ons, besitlike voornaamwoord, so it's a possessive pronoun. Beklemtoon met aksentteken. So aksentteken is that small little like line that's on the O, which just says like when you say this word you sort of need to emphasize it. So that's how it's emphasized, these words. En dit is effektief omdat dit die idee versterk dat die nuwe kind as 'n buitestander beskou word. Die leerders wil nie hulle skool of onderwyser met die nuwe kind deel nie. So it just says the use of the ons with the aksentteken on it, emphasizing it, is quite functional and effective. Because once again, it like sort of makes this idea stronger of the new child as someone on the outside. You know, the learners don't want to share their school or their teacher with the new child. So your hare volgens die reëls geskeer is your hair shaped according to the rules. Die nuwe kind probeer inpas, maar die ons wil nie die nuwe leerders sommer tot die groep toelaat nie. So as you can see, like this boy that's new in the school is doing everything according to the school rules and everything he's supposed to do, almost like he's really trying to fit in, yet the ons, the us, does not want to allow him to just be part of this group. Hector Shabukwe, hoor ons jou naam, so Hector Shabukwe, we hear your name, so Hector Shabukwe, beklemtoon. So how Hector, like how his name is emphasized is through this. Deur die voorafplasing en direkte rede. So they put this at the beginning of the sentence, and then it's also in direct speech. So you have the quotation marks. Hy word bekend gestel wat aansluit by versdeel 6. So he gets introduced that like links to line 6. And then his name, sy naam herinner ons aan die geskiedenis van Hector Peterson tydens die 1976 skoolopstand deur die polisie doodgeskiet. So his name reminds us of two very important people who fought in the struggle, and that is Hector Peterson, the boy who was shot by police during the 1976 like uprisings, en Robert Sobukwe, stigter van die PAC en was in die tronk en toe huisarrest op sy doods, and also Robert Sobukwe, who was like one of the creators of the PAC, and he was in prison and then he was in house arrest until his death. So two important people in the struggle that his name sort of like made out of. That just once again emphasizes that this boy is coming here with a lot of pain that was caused by what was happening during apartheid. 'n koningskind al is jy skaam, so a king's child even if you are shy. Metafoor, it's a metaphor. Idee dat hy van koninklike herkoms is, so there's like this idea that he is from like royal heritage. Sy naam en van verteenwoordig belangrike persone in SA geskiedenis. So his name and surname represents important people in South African history. So skaam, aandagstreep. So after the aandagstreep, which is like the line, do you just call it a hyphen in English? I think you do. In Afrikaans, when you translate aandagstreep, it says attention line. So it's obviously putting the focus on what follows. So beklemtoon dat die kinders verwag dat hy arrogant gaan wees, koningskind, maar hy is nie. So it's almost like the kids assume that because this boy is called a king's child, they assume he's going to be arrogant, but he's not. He's actually quite shy. Bedees knik jy asof jy ons bedank. So it's almost like his sort of like nodding his head, and it's almost as if though he's thanking these kids. So infashi, so the infashi is like the changing of the sentence structure. Klem val op bedees en bedank, okay? So the emphasis falls on bedees en bedank. Die leerders besef dat die kind nie arrogant is nie. It just says like they realize because he's quite humble and he thanks them, which is ridiculous because he's thanking them for being in a space that he was supposed to be part of from the beginning. But it's just showing once again that this child is not arrogant at all. En gaan sit dan stil in jou bank, and then goes and sits quietly at your desk. Nuwe kinders voel vreemd aan die begin en alles is nog onbekend. So just sort of emphasizing that, any new child in a school, everything is strange, everything is new. Obviously, this is very, very different and maybe like emphasized 5 million times more because it was just after apartheid. And I think being the first black child in a predominantly white school after apartheid is a very difficult thing to actually go through. Uit 'n Tupperware bakkie, soos dit hoor, so out of a Tupperware container like it's supposed to be. Infashi, so the change of the sentence structure, the change of the word order. Beklemtoon dat hy soos enige ander kind in die school is. It's just emphasizing that he's like any other child in the school. Eet jy pauses jou snytjies brood, you eat your bread at break. Meer as een keer waar hy pauses alleen is, die leerders moes hom ook dophou om te weet dat hy alleen eet. So just like, it's sort of emphasizing, because it says pauses. So it's been happening more than one break that this boy is eating alone, and the learners must have been watching him to know that he's eating alone. And then we have maar. Okay, so but, teenstelling, wending, verandering, so there's a change in the poem. Okay? Or it's like a contradiction that's going to happen. But in this case, it's sort of just like a change. Een kant alleen onder 'n boom, so one side alone under a tree. Hy het nog nie maats gemaak nie, en die leerders het hom nog nie tot hul groep toegelaat nie. Alleen tussen die kommas beklemtoon die woord, so it just says, he hasn't made friends yet, the learners have not allowed him into their group yet, and the alleen in between the two commas just emphasizes the word. Gaan staan jy dan en droom. You go and stand and dream. I'm sorry, I don't know if you can hear that in the background, but it's thunder. Sorry, that just goes to 11 and 12. In jambement, een versreel vloei in die ander een. So it's just in jambement, when the one line flows into the other. Hy is in sy eie wêreld vasgevang. So when he goes and he stands and dreams, maybe this is like an escape to him. Like, people in the school aren't accepting him. So he goes and he stands and he goes into his own little dream world, and this is sort of his escape from the horrible circumstance that he has in the school. In die kunstklas word jou pen 'n mast. So it just says in the art class, your pen becomes a mast. Is that what the word is? Like a thing of a sailboat. So this whole stanza is a metaphor. Kuns is sy ontsnappingsroute. So the reason it's a metaphor is because art is his escape route from the situation that he finds himself in. So this goes to klas en mast. Infashi en binneruim, so there's infashi, change of word order, and binneruim, in other words, in one line things are rhyming. Kuns is sy passie en sy gunsteling vak, waar hy die meeste homself kan wees. It's just saying that his pen becomes powerful when he is, oh wow, sure. Sorry, I don't know if you could hear that and if I'm just like doing this and it's strange. Anyway, So in the art class, like his pen is quite powerful, and art is his passion, his favorite subjects, and it's the place where he can be himself the most through his artwork. And then pen, symbool van skip se mas, pen is positief versus pen in versal 1. So it just says, like, in this case, there's a symbol of like the mast of a ship and like something that is powerful. So the pen in this case is being used like in a positive way because it's powerful. And if you contrast that to pen in stanza or line 1, where it says like you can't move because they're staring at him so much, which is something negative. Obviously there has been some change in this poem, or there's some change within the child when he is in art and he can do what he loves. He just becomes himself and he becomes very powerful. So hy is jy prentjie seile uit jou ribbekas. You hoist picture sails out of your rib cage. Sailboot is a symbool van vryheid. So a sailboat is a symbol of freedom. Sy pen of kwas beskryf wat in sy hart, ribbekas aangaan. Deur sy kuns kan hy ontsnap. So it just says his pen or his brush describes what is in his heart, because ribbekas refers to like the heart, because does the rib cage protect the heart? I don't know. I'm not a bio teacher, but you understand what he's saying. And sort of when he has this pen or this brush, he talks about what goes on in his heart, so he draws it, and through art, once again, he can escape. So, vaar jy weg oor wit papier, die toekoms in, nog ver van hier. So this is actually for both lines. So it just says you sort of like drift away on white paper into a future that is still far away from here. Met die seilbootjie kan hy in sy verbeelding of in sy gedagtes bevry word van die nuwe skool en die leerders wat hom so ontuis laat voel. So it just says with his little sailboat, he can, and his like imagination, or in his thoughts, he can get away from this new school and the learners that makes him feel so unwelcome. In die kunstklas hoef hy nie deel te wees van 'n groep wat hom nie daar wil hê nie. So in the art class, he doesn't need to try to be part of a group that doesn't actually want him there. So this goes to the ellipse. Wil beklemtoon dat nog lank gaan neem vir alles in Suid-Afrika goed gaan wees. Toekoms is ver, maar daar is nog hoop. So these two lines can also just refer to the fact that obviously after apartheid, I think anyone who thought that after apartheid everything would just be fine, it was like bluffing themselves. Like, we knew that was not going to happen. We know race relations in our country is still very intense. So it just says, like, it's just emphasizing that there's still a long road ahead for South Africa to recover from everything that happened during apartheid. And it's going to take quite a while for everything to be okay in our country. The future is far, but there is hope, and there is hope. As a teacher, I do hope that, like, somewhere in the future, I might not be alive then, things in our country would be better. Okay, and then, ver van hier, far from here, die situasie waarin hy homself bevind, buite sonder indringer. So it just says, like, die ver van hier, the here is emphasizing the situation in which he finds himself currently, which is being like the outsider, sort of like this is so hard, this was in the notes, but like the invader in the situation, although he should not feel like that, it's the way these kids are making him feel. So there's just two things left to say, and the first one is thema, so the theme. Die vooroordele teenoor mense wat van ons verskil, so the prejudice that we have towards people who are different from us. Obviously within this poem, it's very outright sort of like, the outright sort of like racism, or microaggressions that exist. So if you also say racisme for thema, I would think that it should be right. And then stemming is vertellen. So the tone of the poem is that it's telling a story. Okay, so that's the end of this. I hope the notes and the explanation helps you. I really do enjoy this poem. I think it's such an important poem to actually do, especially with everything not just happening in our country, but all over the world. But yeah, I hope this helped you a lot. And Stertkte. Good luck with your exams. Tot ziens, almal.